Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I'm here with Model A Weaver Customs Twisted Mistress. Alright, that's a whole mouthful for the name of the car, but essentially it's a Ford. And anytime I see a Ford, I want to investigate into it because Fords you can get fusions for very easily in the game. So that's always a good start. Plus, this car you can acquire from Showdown at 1200, or if you want to spend some real money, you could buy it. So it's accessible to all players in a sense, although it's not quite free, because to get to 1200, you're going to need other cars that are built, and the top choice there would be the Mustang Cobra Jet. But that being aside, let's talk about this car. If you have it, if you fusion it out to stage 5, this car is very good even at just this level. You don't really need any stage 6s to make good use of the car, and it is already maxed out on its tune. So here we have stage 5 full fusion, and the best tune it seems is right, left, left, which is your minimum duration nitrous, 2.0 final drive, 0-100 higher. That gives you a dyno of 8.771. Fortunately, at this dyno and at this level of performance for the car, you can easily beat that time by a little bit, giving you an actual run of almost 8.65 or so. Assuming, of course, everything goes right with the launch and everything else. Now, I think Natural Motion designed this car so that, one, you can't easily down tune it once you get past stage 5 upgrades, and two, they realized maybe they made the car too good and then they limited its final drive's top speed as a way to kind of keep the car from becoming a 6-second car, because it is very fast. And even with the, I would say, limitations on the top speed, it is an incredibly fast car that runs right to its top speed only 3/4 down the track. So if it had another 50 mile per hour to play with, this will be like a 6.9 second car fully maxed. As it stands, I just did an 8.676. I might have hit nitrous a little earlier than needed, but it'll hit 8.65s or better if you're really good, perhaps right around that range. So 8.6 on a 8.7 dyno, it runs about a tenth under, little over a tenth. So it's a very decent car at stage 5. Now, also analyzing the dyno again, this car at this exact settings at stage 5 will finish Harkness's challenge, no problem. Well over the mile per hour, well over the required time, and in tier 5 Tempest 3, there's only 0-100, and even if you use it for tier 2, no, I'm sorry, Tempest 2, for sprints, it looks like it also sprints very well. So this is all around a very good car that's good at sprints, has a high top speed, and can easily beat Harkness at stage 5. So if you get a hold of the car, you don't need stage 6s to get anywhere. But of course, it's always nice to have stage 6s. Now, talking about stage 6s, let's look at the stage 6 effects. Now, with this car, what's interesting is the tune will never change from here. You have already reached the maximum level of lowering final drive, the most amount of grip, and nitrous doesn't do much anyway, so you just use the shortest and strongest duration. In that case, all you're doing is you're going to be adding stage 6s, putting in fusions, and basically dynoing it for the result. You're not going to see that the computer's even going to ask you to tune, because you're really not going to be able to tune anymore. That's it. This is about as tuned as it's going to get. So you just look at the final time, and that gives you the time that your car will run. Now, mind you, you may be able to, with some of these stage 6s, beat it by that tenth again, and with other stage 6s, probably not. But as you get all the stage 6s in, it'll be less and less likely you'll be able to run much under dyno. Not to say that you cannot, it just may not be as much. So that was engine, which actually isn't bad. That's about a 3/10 drop. Let's take a look at turbo. Now, turbo probably isn't going to be that much. Intake, not that much. I mean, we know those typical intake turbo stage 6s rarely accomplish much when it comes to dropping the time. Again, no need to tune. 8.642. You're not going to really get better than that if you play with it, because it's only going to go down. So 8.642 it is. Let's see what intake is, because intake may be a little better, a little worse, but it's going to be close. So let's go look at intake. That was turbo. Next is intake. And as you can see, this is one of the easiest stage 6 videos for me to make because I'm not tuning the car between stage 6s. I'm just literally throwing parts on and dynoing them. So this is great. But again, I think this car already peaks out so well at stage 5 only that this is just, all the stage 6s are just if you want to get into the 7s. Okay. Now, 8.632. All right. So 100 is better than turbo, it looks like. So right now, turbo's on the bottom, intake edging it out, and of course, engine is doing pretty good, but I suspect there's some bigger stage 6s coming up. So that was intake, right to nitrous. Again, even for nitrous, we're not tuning because, quite frankly, it's going to use the shortest duration, so therefore no change. You throw nitrous on, you see it increases duration quite a lot, but not a whole lot of power increase. And it doesn't seem to really help to shorten it or elongate the duration. You keep it short. Dyno, 8.638. Wow, that's pretty bad. That actually is worse than intake. So it kind of fell between intake and turbo. So nitrous is second to bottom. Wow, okay. All right, so nitrous is not that great. Let's move on and take a look at the next stage 6. So we've gone through 3 rather weak ones. That means in these last 3, there has to be at least 1 or 2 strong ones, right? So naturally, we look at this with a big jump. That's going to be a big one. Let's take a look. Dyno says 8.268. All right, that's a big drop. That's 8.78. So it's a 0.5 drop in time. Given that it's such a big drop, let's go ahead and take a run with it, see how well it does. Whether I still get under dyno by a tenth, that would push it into the 8.1s with one stage 6. Now, if I don't get under a tenth and I only run dyno, that's different. Let's also see if we get the 0 RPM drop still. Probably will because, yep, it does still get that. And there it is, right. And it's only 3 gears. This car is extremely easy to drive too. And since it's always 0 RPM launch, hey, can't complain about that either. Doesn't look like it's getting much under dyno though, so it could have been my driving technique, but 8.268, 300's under dyno at least for body. So again, playing with the launch and shift, this car, since it's 0 RPM launch, you can get on nitrous in first gear, and then it's all pretty much perfect shifts from there. At least that's one of the easiest ways I found to drive it. Okay, so now we're moving to tire. Once again, nice jump. A little bit of jump. So tire isn't weak at all. This looks like tire's going to be a strong one for this car. Let's take a look. Again, no tune needed. It's already 0-100, and I don't think you need to lower it or make it less grippy. So here we go. Dyno it is 8.377. That puts it somewhere closer to engine rather than body. But so body obviously top of the list right now. So body, tires definitely second at the moment. Then we have one more left to check. And if transmission is not strong, we pretty much have our top 3 and bottom 4 right there very easily here. So it's going to be body, tire, engine, and then the rest, assuming, of course, transmission is not going to be strong. Let's see here. Yeah, no, that doesn't look good. Without a lot of evo changes, even if there is a decent amount of performance point change, I don't anticipate this being more than the 10th or so in total effect. Okay, 8.638. Wait a minute. This is like right there with nitrous, right? Now it's like nitrous fell between the intake and turbo, so it looks like trans and nitrous kind of fell in between, right next to each other. Now you got top 3, bottom 4, but the bottom 4 actually is within like a hundredths or so of each other. So the bottom 4 is terrible, and then the top 3 is really good. Typical of Natural Motion's way of making stage 6s. This means if you really want this car to get really much faster, you need very specific stage 6s first before you get to that goal. Since this is not a car you're going to be running anything really crazy with, except for the Detroit Metro City event, which I think at 8.7 might be fast enough for you to do it anyway. I really doubt they're going to throw 7-second opponents against you. But then again, I haven't done the event, so I could end up regretting that comment. All right, now, so top 3 here, here, and here. Just these 3 added will bump us down well under 7 seconds, I would think, because one of them already gets you to 8.2, and the other 2 are pretty decent too. So what do we have? 7.6. So 7.6 just with those 3 versus the other 4 in combination, I suspect, will get you to about an 8.4. Almost a full second difference, or almost a 0.8 second difference. But that's my guess, that you're going to be somewhere between 8.4 and 8.3 with the other 4, because they don't give much individually. Even cumulatively, I suspect they're not going to give you as much as I would hope. Not this one. This one's a good one. Transmission. So these are the 4 worst, and we're throwing them in, and let's see what they'll do. Oh, not bad. 8.286 is almost, it's actually better than I anticipated. I was thinking 8.4, 8.3. So this actually isn't too bad, 8.286, but that's again 4 stage 6s, 8.2, which by the way, one body will get to. So your 4 other stage 6 is equivalent to the one body stage 6. That's what you're looking forward to as you post stage 6s. Now, that being said, I mentioned earlier that this car seems pretty good at stage 5. It's actually pretty good at stage 4. What's interesting about this car is that because it's such high Evo count from the get-go, this car is a little bit of a beastly car when it comes to having lower performance point upgrades and still maintaining a very decent Evo count. In fact, right now we're not quite at the maximum Evo of a tier 4 car, which I can easily accomplish by reducing something else here. For example, I can get rid of a little more of the Nitrous if I want, maybe stage 3. Trans cannot get under stage 4, but other stuff you can also play with. Now, at 673 performance points, if you're running against a tier 4 car that is nearly fully maxed, they would be running somewhere in the 9.5 to 9.9 range for the most part. Now, your car is saying 10.995, but here you're going to get to tune it a little differently, and you can play with the numbers here. Okay, 10.674. So at 673 performance points is not as competitive in a sense, but watch this. What this car will do, what's interesting about it is that it actually does better at lower upgrades with less grip. Now you can put some grip in and you can still accomplish that 1400 or so Evo points while running a very high mile per hour. So we can play with this. As you can see, 1500 is reachable right there. We'll talk about that Evo drop in a second. All right, so 10.691, and playing with this doesn't really help. So now 10.691 is not very impressive. That means that this performance point at that Evo point, this car probably won't be lobbying with a huge advantage when you're facing cars that are lower in performance. However, let's look at what it runs first, and then we'll talk about that little Evo drop I saw earlier. Plus, at stage 3, surprisingly, you don't lose that much Evo points either, so this car has potential regardless. Okay, now, that probably wasn't the best way to drive it, but let's go ahead and see what it runs first. That's the most important part. .753 on a 10.691 isn't that great. You can in fact beat dyno with it. Let's try one more run, and then after that we're going to talk about the dyno drop, I mean the Evo drop dyno tune for this car. So once you get to stage 5, none of this works. This only works with lower upgrades, and actually stage 3 upgrades will work just fine for this. Okay, so once I hit 60, I'm going to go ahead and get out of first and run the car out. It will hit top speed. It always hits top speed pretty easily. That's the nature of this car. And that's where that extra top speed, if you want to play with it, can give you a little margin of additional performance. So 10.635 on 10.691. It beats dyno by a little bit. Now, once you start lowering it here, you're going to drop another chunk of time. Now you're at 10.9 versus 10.6. Okay, and you can make that even greater if you want to play with it, but here's 10.911, and now if you launch the car and you launch it a little late, you can get that 10.6 run without a problem. Now, you'll get 0 RPM drop a little bit. I'm pretty sure you're going to get it if you launch it dead on now. Okay, but again, you can use Nitrous there and still easily run dyno. The question is whether you can get under dyno, which is harder, but you should. Okay, just a hair. But if you run it with a late launch, now you're going to actually crush dyno. So we're going to do that next. This is just to show I can run dyno with a 0 RPM drop. And again, I think Natural Motion's been designing newer cars to get around this issue, so they don't want you to actually pull this off. This is why after stage 5, they kind of limit the top speed. They make sure that you're already at 0-100 tire. The car automatically gets a 0 RPM launch. So all these techniques we normally use to dyno bust would not be as easy to do, and therefore the cars theoretically would be more fair in live racing. Although, to me, it plays out either way. It doesn't matter either way. You can always tune the car in other ways to make it viable in live. But here, 10.7 on a 10.9. So now you're running under dyno. Now you could probably make it that even better once you tweak it a little bit. Okay, I can do something like this. Give it a little more margin here. As you can see, it has interesting spots where it actually gains a bunch of performance and is able to actually get to similar times without much of a problem. Okay. So we got 10.955. Now, given that I've increased the final speed by a lot, I should still be able to run under that utilizing the same driving technique I did earlier, or even just using Nitrous quick enough. So once again, there are various ways to tune this car. It doesn't come down to just one thing. But one thing I do know is that it can destroy dyno pretty easily. Okay, so, and again, the more upgrades, sometimes you lose the ability to do this, whereas the less upgrades, you're actually able to do this better. That's just the way the game works. And look at that, 10.2 on a 10.9. Okay, all right. Anyway, that is the way this car works. Again, I think they arbitrarily limited top speed here in some ways to make sure this car doesn't get too crazy, because if this car can hit at least 350 or 400 like some cars in the game, this should be a 6-second car, because it definitely has the linear pull that I see that would give it that. But again, I think Natural Motion limited the car intentionally, one, to avoid easy down tunes, and two, to kind of try to keep the car from being tweaked for dyno busting as far as it's concerned. So anyway, this is a fully built car. It's about a 7.3 car. Because of, again, the limitations on all parts, even fully built, the car does not really run as much faster than what the dyno says, because again, you top out. Once you top out, it just gets hard for the car to actually outperform itself when it comes to the dyno, and it reaches that very quickly, kind of like the Nissan GTR. If you drive the old GTR, That's how it works. 7.359 is the dyno, and we're going to go ahead and run it. I'm not using the launch button for these demonstrations, but it works the same way when you use the launch button. Once again, if it loads, here we go. All right, so you're going to get the 0 RPM drop, which is not a big deal. Just get it, okay? And we nitrous and shift and done. Now, the nitrous is way too long. It's not needed, but hey, if you have more top speed, it would be nice to have. But here we go. So just did the run 7.319, which is just a little bit under that. But at this point, you're in a hyper lobby situation where there are going to be cars that run 6.9s against you, so it's not all that competitive here. If I were to personally set this up and use it in live, I'd probably stick to the low performance point high evo settings, where I can also tweak final drive to get whatever amount of dyno beating I think is fair for me to win. Not fair, I mean favorable is more the term, right? It's favorable for me to sandbag accordingly and win. I would do that. But ultimately, this is a very good car, and I'm pretty happy it was added to the game. Plus, I always wanted something like this to drive around in, so now I get a chance to. Again, compared to even the 3030, this is a much more interesting car, both from its performance level and also the tuning perspective. Easy to get fusions for, harder to get stage 6s for, but definitely a decent car overall in the game. Is it worth actual money? That's always debatable. Everybody's opinions are different on that. To me, I don't think it's worthy as a paid car, but having acquired it with the Cobra Jet in Showdown, I'm okay with this. And I'm certainly happy to play around with it some more. Stage 6s probably won't be that easy to get until you get far enough in Detroit Motor City to get to use this car, at which point there should be crates and you can max it out. All right. If you have any questions about anything I've shown, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll try to give tips where I can. If you like the video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to get notifications when I put up new videos, then please subscribe to the channel so you can get those notifications. As always, thank you for watching my video. I'll catch you next time.